The silence in the room was deafening. No one dared to breathe, waiting for the inevitable to unfold. But then, something unexpected happened. Sophia Grant, the quiet maid who had spent years serving the Romano family, never imagined she would be caught in the middle of a moment like this. It all started when Alessandra Romano, the matriarch of the notorious Mafia family, found herself humiliated in front of everyone. A slap was about to land on her face, and Sophia, despite knowing the risks, couldn't stand by. She stepped forward, instinctively shielding Alessandra from the blow. The room went still, every eye locked on the bold woman who had just defied the family's unspoken rules. The tension was thick, as though the air itself had frozen in place. But what happened next was beyond anyone's expectation. Luca the Devil Romano, the feared Mafia boss, entered the room. His chilling presence could have shattered anyone's composure. But instead of fury, his eyes softened as they landed on Sophia. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the weight of the world was in those eyes, a silent recognition of her courage. No one dared to speak. Luca remained silent too, his gaze unyielding. And for the first time, Sophia realized that there was more to this powerful man than anyone knew. In that single glance, everything shifted, and Sophia felt her heart race with an unfamiliar fear, but also something else. A possibility. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sophia stood there, her heart pounding in her chest, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But Luca did not yell, did not raise his hand. Instead, his gaze never left her, as if studying her very soul. The room was still, everyone too afraid to speak, even though they were all waiting for a sign. Any sign from Luca. Slowly, he leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping gently on the armrest. Sophia could feel the weight of his eyes, like an invisible force pulling her in. The tension in the room was palpable. Then, with a voice as calm as ice, Luca finally broke the silence. "You have guts," he said, his tone neither harsh nor approving, but simply acknowledging. The words hit Sophia like a wave. She wasn't sure if they were a compliment or a warning. For a brief moment, she felt her pulse quicken. Was he testing her? Or was he genuinely impressed? She didn't know, but she didn't back down. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, but she held her ground, not letting her fear show. Luca continued to watch her with an unreadable expression. "What's your name?" he asked after a pause, his voice soft but commanding. "Sophia," she answered, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. He gave a slight nod, as though the name meant something to him. "Sophia, you've earned my attention. Don't make me regret it." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Sophia realized that this was no ordinary Mafia boss. Luca Romano was not just powerful, he was something far more dangerous, unpredictable. Sophia could feel her heart racing, but she didn't let her nerves show. Luca's words echoed in her mind. "You've earned my attention." It was a strange thing to hear from someone like him, someone who ruled with an iron fist. As she stood there, still trying to process the encounter, the room began to fill with a low murmur of whispers, but Luca silenced them all with a single glance. His eyes never left Sophia, a deep, unreadable gaze that seemed to peel back her every layer. She could feel her breath catch, but she remained composed. She had been in situations before where she was forced to keep her cool, but this was different. This was Luca Romano, the head of one of the most powerful families in the city, and he had just noticed her. The weight of his attention pressed down on her, but it wasn't as threatening as she had imagined. It was almost comforting. Sophia quickly dismissed the thought. She wasn't here to get comfortable. She was here to do her job, to survive. And yet, something in Luca's demeanor made her question if there was more to him than the ruthless, cold-hearted image she had been taught to believe. "You're not like the others." Luca's voice broke through her thoughts, the words carefully chosen. She didn't know if it was a compliment or something else entirely. But one thing was certain, whatever this was, it was just the beginning. Sophia stood there, trying to ignore the strange knot tightening in her stomach. Luca's words still hung in the air, his attention lingering on her with a weight she had never experienced. She had seen him command entire rooms with just a glance, seen the fear in people's eyes when he entered, yet here she was, under his gaze, not quite as afraid as she should be. She knew it was dangerous to think this way, but something about his calm demeanor made her hesitate. He wasn't like the monsters she had been warned about. His presence was commanding, yes, but there was a strange gentleness in the way he held his gaze. "You're not like the others," he repeated, almost as if testing her reaction. His voice was softer now, less commanding, yet still carrying the weight of his position. Sophia met his eyes, wondering what he saw when he looked at her. Was she just another pawn in his game, or something more? The room had returned to its usual hush, everyone watching with bated breath, but for the first time since stepping into this world, Sophia felt not invisible. Luca stood up slowly, his wheelchair creaking under him, and moved closer to her. The space between them felt charged, yet he said nothing more, just studied her with those piercing eyes. It was as if he was waiting for her to say something. But what could she say? She wasn't sure what he wanted from her, or if he even knew himself. Sophia held her breath as Luca's wheelchair glided closer, the faint sound of the wheels on the polished floor the only thing breaking the silence. The tension in the room thickened, but she remained still, not daring to move. She could feel his presence now more than ever, a calm but undeniable force surrounding her. He stopped just a few feet away, his eyes never leaving hers. Sophia could see the faint flicker of something in his gaze, something like curiosity mixed with something darker, but it was fleeting, as if he was just as unsure as she was. The air felt heavier as the seconds ticked by, and finally, Lucas spoke, his voice breaking the spell. "You're different," he said quietly, his tone as steady as always, but there was an almost imperceptible softness to it. Sophia wasn't sure how to respond. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. She had only been trying to protect Alessandra, doing what anyone would do in her place. But Luca's reaction was far from what she expected. She had anticipated anger, maybe even punishment, but instead, she got something else entirely, an unexpected acknowledgement. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty she had hoped to mask. Luca didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes studying her with an intensity that felt like it was stripping away every layer she tried to hold on to. "Nothing," he replied, finally, though his words didn't offer the comfort she thought they would. "But you have my attention. Don't waste it." And with that, the moment shifted again. Luca turned away, signaling that the conversation was over. But as he wheeled himself toward the door, Sophia was left standing in the stillness, her mind whirling with unanswered questions. Sophia stood motionless, her mind reeling from the strange encounter. The room was silent again, the weight of Luca's presence still lingering. She felt like she had been thrust into a world she barely understood, a world where nothing was as it seemed. As Luca's chair creaked farther away, she couldn't help but glance at his retreating figure. For a moment, she almost thought he might turn around and say something more, something that would make sense of the unsettling moment. But he didn't. The door clicked softly as it closed behind him, and the tension in the room slowly began to dissipate. Sophia exhaled, feeling the air return to her lungs. She hadn't expected any of this, not the protection from Luca, not the strange calm that had settled over her in the aftermath. Her thoughts were chaotic, battling each other for attention. Was this a test? Had he been watching her all along, waiting for something to happen? She shook her head, trying to focus. She was a maid. She had a role to play. And yet, something about Luca Romano was pulling at her. It was more than just the power he exuded. It was the way he looked at her, as if he saw something in her that no one else did. She shouldn't be thinking this way, but she couldn't help it. As she turned to leave, the echoes of his words, "Don't waste it," followed her like a shadow, reminding her that this was far from over. Sophia walked through the quiet halls of the Romano estate, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The weight of Luca's words still hung over her, like an invisible force pressing down on her chest. Don't waste it. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just shifted in ways she couldn't yet understand. She had always been a quiet observer, someone who stayed in the background, out of sight, doing her job without drawing attention. But that moment, when she stood between Luca's mother and the slap that would have landed, had changed everything. She wasn't just a maid anymore. Luca had seen her, and he had acknowledged her in a way that made her heart race. Was it a test? Did he see something in her that she didn't even see in herself? As she passed the grand staircase, she paused for a moment, her hand resting on the banister. The mansion felt different now, colder, more intimidating. The walls, once familiar, now seemed to close in on her. She had always kept to herself, always tried to remain invisible, but that was no longer an option. She was part of this world now, whether she liked it or not. And Luca Romano, the man who ruled it all, had given her his attention. The thought made her uneasy, but at the same time, it stirred something deep inside her. She wasn't sure what it was, but she knew it wasn't something she could ignore. Sophia stood in the corridor, the quiet hum of the mansion surrounding her. She had always been good at blending into the background, at disappearing into the shadows. But now, after Luca's words, after his unyielding gaze, she couldn't escape the feeling that everything had changed. The world she had known, the routine she had kept, felt like it was unraveling before her eyes. She tried to push the thoughts away, focusing on her tasks, but Luca's voice lingered in her mind. Don't waste it. What did he mean by that? And why had he chosen her to notice? The questions swirled in her head, but one thing was certain. The power he held was undeniable. She could feel it in the air around her, heavy and unspoken, like the weight of every decision he made. Her heart raced as she continued down the hall, unsure of what to expect next. Would he continue to watch her? Was there more to this strange connection than she realized? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she couldn't deny the strange pull she felt toward him. It was dangerous, she knew that. But there was something about Luca, something beyond the Mafia boss he was known to be, that made her question everything. She wasn't sure if it was his power, his calm, or the way he had looked at her, but it stirred something inside her that she couldn't ignore. She had always prided herself on being invisible, but now, she was anything but. Sophia felt the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her as she walked through the mansion, each step feeling heavier than the last. She had always known the Romano family was dangerous, but after her encounter with Luca, she was starting to realize just how much she didn't understand. The way he had looked at her, as if she were something more than just a maid, had stirred something within her, something that made her question everything. She had always stayed in the background, never daring to dream of anything more. But now, she was no longer invisible. Luca's words echoed in her mind, his voice steady and calm, yet filled with an undeniable weight. Don't waste it. But what was it? What was he asking of her? She didn't know, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into a world where nothing was as simple as it seemed. She had never been part of this family, never been anything more than a servant. Yet Luca had seen her, acknowledged her, and now she couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him. The thought terrified her. She knew better than anyone the dangers of getting too close to someone like him. But something inside her, something she didn't fully understand, urged her to take the risk. The decision loomed over her, a choice between staying in the shadows or stepping into the unknown, where the stakes were higher than she could ever imagine.